Chapter 63. My Life Today. When I first heard Vince McMahon open up about the business, I was horrified. Wrestlers of my generation were under the impression that if anyone broke the oath and told people that wrestling was manipulated, it would kill the business and wrestling would die a horrible death. I must admit that I was amazed that Vince's admission didn't kill the business. Yes, I was always aware that people knew wrestling wasn't on the up and up, but was surprised that when they were told it wasn't real they would still watch. Vince is actually a very sharp businessman doing what I would have loved to have done with world class. In the early 80s, he had a plan. He wanted to be the king of wrestling, so he took every opportunity available to him and he accomplished that. By exposing professional wrestling, he made a business decision that proved to be right, because I've seen the heights he has taken wrestling to, as well as the financial gains that wrestlers make. I accept the fact that he was right and the rest of us were wrong. I still love wrestling and watch it, though I'm probably one of the few old-timers who do. I'll talk to other retired wrestlers and they'll insist that they don't watch wrestling, but come on. I was a wrestler for 30 years. I watch Raw and SmackDown as often as I can, and know all the storylines. What do you want to know? You want to know who did what to who last week? I can tell you. I still have a great love for wrestling, and I will always have that. There's a lot of great pieces of talent today, and when I see young guys that are really good, like Randy Orton or Kurt Angle, my heart starts pumping and my blood starts rushing. At times, I wish I could be a young kid again and manage and develop their careers the way I did with so many other guys. Then I realize I'm not a young guy and 3 days on the road would kill me. I'm also so proud of guys like Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Steve Austin, Booker T, and John Bradshaw Layfield, and am glad I was able to touch their careers in some way. Since Vince turned wrestling into entertainment, I see how beneficial professional wrestling has been for them in so many ways, because they will have opportunities to make money off of t-shirts, dolls, books, and personal appearances long into retirement. When I think about all those years I sat at the National Wrestling Alliance meetings, and how we could never agree on a lousy $75 guarantee for the boys, it amazes me to see that Vince's wrestlers all have downside guarantees. While some might stick up their nose at what that guarantee is, I remember all the old wrestlers of my generation who went up and down the highway and never made more than $100 a night. And granted, the wrestlers in the WWE don't have health plans or retirement benefits, but they will get residuals. The guys of my generation never had that. When my career was over, it was over. I don't have anyone currently marketing the legacy of Gary Hart. I don't have t-shirts, DVDs, dolls, or pictures accruing me residual checks. That wasn't afforded to me in my career. However, Vince McMahon has made that possible for the wrestlers of today. He has great marketing plans, and makes a lot of wrestlers a lot of money. Believe me when I tell you, the wrestling business is far better now than ever before. For that, I am overjoyed, and can only wish those plans were in place when I was in wrestling. With that said, I should add that I made a great living in wrestling. I didn't become a millionaire and I'm not rich, but because of what I did when I got my settlement from the crash, I'm comfortable. Sure, I've lost a few bucks over the years, but I still have my 2 children and my health, so what's a little cash? Life is more than money. For me, if my bills are covered, there's food in the cupboard, and my children are happy, then I don't need any more money, and I don't need to drive around in a Cadillac. The wrestling business provided me with things that I never even dreamed of having. If it weren't for wrestling, this kid from Halstead Street probably would have ended up in jail or dead in some alley, because I grew up with not many options to having a good life. I realize where I came from, can see the blessed life that I've had, and know that I owe everything I have to wrestling. I would have to be blind, deaf, and stupid not to see that. I've been blessed in so many ways, and I realize that, and that's why I'm not bitter that my career is over. I went through, got out, and moved on with my life. Believe it or not, that's one of the most difficult battles many wrestlers face. Having Jason and Chad made it so easy for me to just put the wrestling part of my life behind me, because taking care of them was something that I could devote all my time to. I would get up in the morning, make breakfast for them, take them to school, and pick them up at the end of the day. I've had so much quality time with them since I left Atlanta that it's been the greatest time in my life. These days, my oldest son Jason is doing really good in radio. He produces and does the sports on a morning show called Daybreak USA, which is on in 200 markets. Chad goes to the gym and works independent shows hoping for an opportunity with WWE. Both of them are very close because they're only 18 months apart, and they've always been best of friends. They're such good boys, and I'm so proud of them. I'm very fortunate not to have any serious injuries from my career. Due to the crash in the bay, my wrist hurts when the weather turns bad, but over the years I've changed my diet, and take homeopathic pills to help with aches and pains. I'm very much a naturalist when it comes to drugs and medication, and if a doctor ever had to make a living off me, he would go broke. I come from very good genes, though. My ancestors come from England, Ireland, and Wales, and they're all healthy and hearty. My mother is 89, and both my grandmothers lived to be 90. My grandmother had 9 children and 39 grandchildren, and all the grandchildren are alive except for 3. So what am I up to these days, you ask? I'm living well, drinking green tea, smoking a bowl occasionally, and am very happy and content with my life. I'm on perpetual vacation, and believe me, it's nice. I have adjusted really well to retirement, and I did it slowly over a period of time. At least I think I'm well adjusted. Maybe I'm just kidding myself, and it's all just marijuana induced. I'm currently living in North Texas, between Dallas and Fort Worth. I first came to Texas in 1966, and even though I was in and out of a lot of places, if you add up the years I spent in Texas wrestling organizations, about 20 of my 30 years were here. Needless to say, Texas is a very special place for me. To this day, I still get recognized when I go out. I was on TV here for over 20 years, whether it was KTVT, WTBS, or World Class Championship Wrestling. One time, I went to a Willie Nelson concert, and this guy kept looking at me. Once you've been famous enough to turn heads, you get radar when someone recognizes you. Finally, I just looked at him and gave him a nod, and he came over, kneeled down beside me, and said, "Mr. Hart, I just want to thank you." My dad died over a long period of time with stomach cancer, and the only time he wasn't in tremendous pain was when he was calling you a son of a bitch on Saturday nights. I make regular personal appearances at fundraisers for the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, women's shelters, and homeless shelters. If my being there might make a difference in people showing up and donating something for those less fortunate, then I'm happy to lend my name. In 1990, I put Gary Hart away, retiring that character when I left the NWA, and began looking at myself as an elder statesman. As I mentioned, I wasn't even thrilled to bring him back in the GWF, but did it for the good of Booker T and Stevie Ray. However, I did dust off the Gary Hart character once more, and brought him back in 2004 for an independent promoter named Court Bauer. He had a promotion by the name of Major League Wrestling, and taped shows out of Orlando, Florida, for the Sunshine Network. On the 15th anniversary of the I Quit match between Terry Funk and Ric Flair, Court booked another I Quit match, this time with Terry Funk against Steve Corino. Court brought me in for the celebration, and I went out and heckled Terry Funk during his match, even though I felt uncomfortable being Gary Hart after all those years. Don't get me wrong, I'm still him, but now I'm more mellow and humorous. I did enjoy working the show, though, as well as getting to hang out with Terry Funk and J.J. Dillon in the dressing room. Court also asked me to manage 2 young wrestlers that night named Low Key and Homicide. I was very impressed with both of them. They're a little short, but extremely good, and very credible. Because I've kept such a low profile over the years, countless rumors about me have surfaced. I've literally heard it all from me being a bank robber to a report that I shot and killed 2 kids trying to rob a video store that I apparently owned, for which I had to do some time in jail. There are all kinds of nonsense out there, though, not only about me, but about the Von Erichs, as well, and it would be a full-time job to try and dispel all the myths floating around about world class, so I don't even bother. However, a few years back I was contacted by a Chicago-based filmmaker named Brian Harrison, who asked if I would help him with an idea he had for a documentary on world class. I told him off the bat that if it was going to be a smear piece then I wasn't interested, but he assured me he would to do it right, and that his main agenda was to give credit to the people who truly created world class. If someone wants to do something positive on world class, I'm behind them all the way, and would do whatever I can to help keep the legacy of world class alive and well. He came to interview me in November 2002, and then 3 months later he returned and, along with Kevin Von Erich, we went to Kevin's ranch to do some filming where Kerry Von Erich shot himself. Unfortunately, the sound for that particular shoot got messed up and the footage couldn't be used. Brian returned in the spring and he and I did some additional shoots at the Will Rogers Coliseum and my favorite Mexican restaurant. It was a lot of hard work and took Brian over 4 years to make, but I'm very pleased with the DVD. It's called Heroes of World Class, the story of the Von Erichs and the rise and fall of World Class Championship Wrestling, and it really came out great. I didn't do Wrestling Fan Fest until Sir Oliver Humperdinck dragged me to one. I'm glad he did, because I had a great time. Prior to that, the only feedback I ever received from the fans were fists, spit, kicks, and stabs. The type of reaction I get now is stunning. I'm now Mr. Hart. People are happy to see me, and they thank me for the memories. Some of these fans are so gracious, and some tell me things that are heart-wrenching. One told me, watching world-class championship wrestling was the only time I ever spent with my father because he worked all the time, but when that came on, he stopped what he was doing and spent time with me. He then put his arms around me and gave me a big hug, saying, "Thank you for all the memories." I had a wonderful career. I started off as wrestler, then became a manager, and was fortunate enough to become an assistant to two brilliant guys, Jim Barnett and Bill Watts, before I became a booker in 1974. As a booker, I was heavily involved in Florida's legendary run of 1974, the first ever Omni sellout, and the very first Starrcade. When I took over the reins in Texas in 1976, I navigated the company through some pretty tumultuous changes and wars, helped develop World Class, and booked the Christmas Night 1982 angle. Through it all, I developed the careers of legendary names like The Spoiler, the Von Erich Boys, Bruiser Brody, Gino Hernandez, the Great Kabuki, King Kong Bundy the Warrior, and the Great Muta, among others. These days, people identify me mainly with World Class, even though I spent so many years on TBS, and was involved in so many other territories. That's fine by me, though, because of all my accomplishments, helping create World Class is my pride and joy. It's the crown jewel on everything and the number one crowning glory of my career. I'm also proud that I had 30 years on top. It's amazing, but in reality, I never saw myself as anything other than a guy who had a good eye for talent. All the success I had didn't come from me, it came from the guys that I surrounded myself with. If you took Don Jardine, Bruiser Brody, the Von Erich Boys, Dusty Rhodes, Gino Hernandez, the Great Kabuki, and the Great Muta away, what would my career have been? So that's my story. If legacy is important, I think I have a good one. Perhaps in this book I come off like a hard-headed, my way or the highway kind of guy, but that's the way I was. Remember, though, I never did it for me. I did it for my talent. You might think I was stupid for walking out of the WWF in 1984 and the NWA in 1990, but I have too much respect for myself to allow anyone to degrade me in any way. Others might have put up with it and looked the other way, but I had to do what I had to do, and I'm not sad that things went the way that they did. I had a long career, I always made money, and I left on my own terms, and that's important to me. I'm quite happy with the choices I made, and I have no regrets. And in the immortal words of basketball coach Bobby Knight, I hope they bury me face down, so my critics can kiss my ass.